Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children 18 plus, you are tuned in to the Loan Officer Podcast with me, Dustin Owen, and a very special guest by way of the 904. This is a math teacher turned mega mortgage loan originator producer. By mega, I mean this dude does $100 million a year, even in years like 2022. He is a fellow podcast host. He is a fellow UCF Knight. He is my friend for the past 15 years, the one, the only, Ian MacDonald. Ian, welcome to the Loan Officer Podcast.
Thank you. I'm going to need you to follow me around and be my hype man when
Wouldn't
I walk
that be
into places.
awesome?
Yeah, if you had your personal hype man.
One day when I make it in life, one day when I become successful, I really want to do this. I want to have an office that A, people come to because they want to come to it. But B, I want to pay for like a DJ. Shout out to my boy DJ
When they walk
Corn
in
Dog.
when they front door.
Everyone gets walk-up music.
Going
Yes.
down.
Like I wish I could have a DJ on retainer and like he or she was in the office from like 7:45 until like 9:15. And everyone, and then like there was like a camera downstairs. So when you get in the elevator to come up,
Right.
the DJ knows to
Show it
cue
from
up
the
your
doors
music.
opening up.
Yeah, and before how cool
It's like
would
your
that
walkout.
be?
What would your walkout music be?
It all depends on the day.
All right.
A go-to for me is probably T.I., Bring 'Em Out, Bring 'Em Out, Bring 'Em Out. Yeah, like that right there. Jay-Z and Kanye have this song called Otis that I love.
Yep.
So I'd probably do some Otis. How about you?
You know, that's a tough one.
You're from Jacksonville. You gonna go some Leonard Skinnard?
No. Even though that was the most Duval thing ever, right? The opening of the Jaguar game, that was awesome. And that dude crushed it. He did a great job, but that was pretty funny that we get a little flack for having the guy out there ripping with his mullet on playing the national anthem. But I don't know, anything in Jay-Z, I always think about like if life is a movie too, right? Like you think about like the opening scene or whatever. And I always thought Rusted Roots Send Me On My Way would be such a great, like I'm waking up in the morning, getting on my way, a little fast. Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, feeling a little good.
I can hear that right now.
Yeah.
I'm not even like a big
Send Me On My
Rusted
Way.
Roots. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah. Very nice. Well, thank you for stopping by. This is really cool. So this is how this all went down. Yes, Ian and I have known each other for the past 15 years. Technically, I think we were fraternity brothers for maybe a day or two before I turned my pen back in.
Right.
I think what really happened is I threw my pen at my girlfriend because we got into a big fight. And part of the fight was me rushing a fraternity. And then like the next night I was in Dane Knutson's dorm hallway.
Okay.
Intoxicated. Trying to do my Spanish homework because I had Spanish at 8 a.m.
Right.
And then by the third day, I was like, do I really want to do this?
Can
How bad do I
keep
want
this
it?
up for semesters on end?
And I didn't live on campus. So I lived a half an hour away. And at the end of the day, I just ended up becoming a de facto SIG EP for the next 4 years where you guys were super nice and invited me to all your events, even spring break. The oh my gosh,
Black
the
Friday,
Halloween party,
Black Friday,
Black Friday party.
It's good times.
Yep, and then we reacquainted because I was a rookie loan originator at this company called Home Bank.
Yep.
A year and a half later, you became a rookie loan originator. So I left TV advertising.
Right.
You left being a math teacher, right?
High school math, yeah.
High school math teacher. And here we are some 15, 18 years later.
Sitting in your office overlooking I-4 in Waterstone's office and making a podcast, man.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
So here's what I want to give to the audience, right? And the audience is typically anybody who is looking to learn stuff that wasn't taught in high school, right? We call it the Loan Officer Podcast because at my core and your core, for the bulk of our profession and the way that we've made and generated our wealth has been through being a mortgage loan originator. But what most people may or may not know is a mortgage loan originator is someone who gives financial advice to the consumer, to the average, ordinary, working American.
Yeah, advice, guidance, and education.
Yeah, so we call it the Loan Officer Podcast, but honestly, people who tune in sometimes are people who are no different than our clients, or they are our clients.
Right.
They could be realtors. They could be fellow loan originators. Sometimes they're wannabe mortgage loan originators. These are people who are in a different career path, but are very intrigued by what you and I have been able to do for a living.
Right.
And then anyone else that they touch, right? So it's all encompassing, but you have such a great story with many tie downs and takeaways. So our objective today is to be able to entertain.
Got it.
And educate.
Got it.
If we knock it out of the park, we're going to motivate and inspire. But I'm not putting that pressure on you, Ian.
I'm going to put that on your side of the
Don't
table.
put that on me.
Yeah.
Don't put that on me. Because I do want to talk about briefly for someone who is looking to enter this industry, you literally went from being a high school math teacher to one of the top, not 1%, you're probably top 0.5% in our entire industry. When you talk about doing 3 consecutive years of over $100 million in volume, that's hundreds of units. And in your, I call it your worst year, but in your best year, you were still only like 30% refi.
Right.
Or 40% refi. So it's not like you were one of these guys and girls who crushed it 99% refi working in a call center.
Then
you're
disappeared.
like, then now you're out of a career.
Right.
You're like, no. I'm old school. I built this the old-fashioned way. These are referral relationships that refer me and my team because I'm darn good at what I do.
You build a brand.
And you built a brand. You built a following. So I'm curious to learn about that and share that. Mm-hmm. So we may start there.
Okay.
And then what you and I are going to have to do, because we're both long-winded, is we're like, okay, we're going to spend 8 minutes on that.
All right, JC, you got to keep us timed here. Okay?
Yes. I want you to talk about your podcast.
Okay.
You may or may not know this, but I love your podcast so much that I'm planning on going around the country with JC, teaching others how to do it based on your success. And here's why. Ladies and gentlemen, you should tune into the Punch List podcast. But here's something really cool. JC and I brag about our 1 million views last year, right? And you shared with me that to date, you all have done 24 episodes, roughly 1 episode a month.
Right.
And you've garnered
2,505 downloads as of yesterday.
2,000, not 200,000,
right.
2,000.
Right.
But in my opinion, you have one of the most successful podcasts that other people should be emulating. They shouldn't try to do what JC and I do. I mean, feel free to. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's also a lot of work. And we have like crazy, lofty goals that the likelihood of us achieving them, the odds are not in our favor.
Right.
Doesn't mean we're going to give up, but they're not. Whereas what you're doing is bringing value to you, your referral partners, and more importantly, is allowing you and your co-host to better market and better brand yourselves within your community.
It's easily obtainable.
Yes. Yes. And it takes you how many hours a week or a month to do?
If we record 1 episode a month, 1.5 hours, maybe 2 hours maximum investment time.
Have you received ROI for both your time and your money?
Yes.
Would you say it's a 10x ROI for your time and money?
I would say so from brand building.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might not, it doesn't always, and that's one of the things hard about ROI, right? Are you calculating on dollars? Are you calculating on exposure? Are you calculating on building your brand, your following? Everything stacks up. And that's something we can talk about too, is, we talk about, a lot of folks talk about work-life balance. One, I don't like that expression. I like life-work balance, right? And I also don't like the word balance because it's 2 ends of a scale. You have to integrate your life into your business. And when people think of Dustin Owen, they want to think of mortgage. When people think of Ian MacDonald, I want them to think of mortgage as well. And so whether you're doing a podcast, whatever you're doing, it's stacking it up with that brand, right? So it's hard on return on investment. Don't just think about dollars. Think about building a brand and building that impact you can
make.
All
right, so we're going to circle back because that's number 2.
All right.
And you just touched on number 3, which is that team building aspect. It's where you are right now in your career.
Right.
Because we have plenty of people who tune in that are just like you and I. They're old school vets. They're at a point in maybe life where work became a bigger priority than outside of work did.
Right.
They're trying to rebalance. It's funny, I don't like the word balance either. I think we're always balancing.
Right.
I don't think you're ever in balance.
Right.
Meaning there's times that work is taking precedent over outside of work,
right.
Family. Sometimes that family is pulling away from your work responsibilities. Right. So I do think as entrepreneurs, salespeople, business professionals, we have to be constantly balancing, which is why I love the yin-yang symbol, well, because that to me is the struggle of work and family as it pertains to professionals.
Well, you only have so much bandwidth in life too. No matter who you are, you only have so much focus. And whether that focus, you're going to put it onto the work or you shift it over to the family, you're taking away from it. And it's opportunity cost, basic economics, right? There's opportunity costs. If you're going to put your time here, you're going to take it away from here because you can't create more time. And that's one of the hardest things to understand is that you have a certain amount of bandwidth. How are you going to spend it? And
facts.
Invest
so
it.
we're gonna finish on that on that. I'm getting ready to circle back to 16 years ago.
Start.
Almost, right? January of 2006.
So 17 years ago.
So 17 years ago. But before we do, we're talking about ROI in the podcast. Remind me, because I'm curious, right? If you added up, I spent this many hours.
Right.
I spent this much money. You have met realtors and builders along the way through the podcast.
Right.
They had to have referred you somebody or somebodies.
Right.
And if you looked at what actually funded from that relationship, you could maybe come up with some tangible revenue.
Quantify it, you could.
Yeah, but I want to talk about it because yours is how I would teach it.
Right.
Mine is not how I would teach it because I don't think mine is as easily accessible to most entrepreneurs, business owners, or 100% commission salespeople.
Makes sense. And also when you start something, you want to do something, you want to see some gains and some results immediately. I mean, we're an instant gratification society, right? And to build up what you have done takes, yes, you've had a lot of success, but it takes a long amount of time, energy, and effort putting into there, and financing and money and all that stuff, right? Where what I've done is very simple. And we went from 0 to 100, meaning, putting the foot on the gas in a month, right? And we had instant gratification. Yeah, we could hear ourselves and we were like, holy cow, we're on Apple Podcasts. It's so cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're JC and I are literally coming up on our 3-year anniversary in March. So March of 2023 is when we'll hit our 3-year anniversary. At the same time, we'll hit around 300 episodes.
Right.
And we're just now, I can tell people we have proof of concept. 3 years into it, proof of concept.
Those words don't enter into our production.
I just now can tell people I can run you a business pro forma based on this particular content creation company, if you want to call a podcast a company.
Yeah.
But that was 3 years of waking up every day saying we're going to be intentional, we're going to produce our 2 episodes, and we're going to try to get 1% better per day.
Right.
Understanding that it's a hobby right now. My wife's like, how's it a hobby? Like, walk me through that. I'm like, honey, it's a hobby because it's a lot of fun to do, and it costs me money.
Right.
No different than golf. No different than any other hobby someone may have.
Right.
Fishing, right? I got to need a boat. I need rods, reels, gas, etc.
Right.
Doesn't make me any money, but I have a lot of fun doing it. The difference with my hobby is maybe one day we could actually turn it into a at least self-sustaining hobby.
Right.
But
it's funny you say that because when we talk on our podcast, we mention about, we don't have a budget. And most people think when you don't have a budget, you can spend it. No, literally, we don't have a budget.
Your budget's zero.
Our budget is zero.
Yes.
And people say, well, why do you do it? I say, it's fun. It's a hobby and it's cheaper than playing golf. Right. And it brings more enjoyment. That once a month or twice a month, whenever we get on a roll or not, that Matt, Jen, and I get together, it is some of our favorite times of the month where we sit there and we just have so much fun talking. And it's great and it's enjoyable. So that's why I think of it as a hobby, because it's enjoyable. It's cost relatively less than a lot of other hobbies out there. And why not?
Man, we're teasing the hell out of this. I'm literally going to circle back still to 2006.
Let's do it, yeah.
But I can't wait to dive into you, Matt, and Jen.
Yeah.
And your podcast and maybe what others can learn, because there's some very valuable takeaways and tie downs that we're going to address.
I appreciate it.
But let's start off with how and why.
Yeah.
What was it 17 years ago that drove you to make a career change?
Well, why is an important thing.
Okay.
Right? Everybody has their why, right? And that's one of the most key things in life is to understand your why, right? My why has always been my family.
Okay.
And at the time I got into in 2006, we had one child, my son Jackson, who is now a senior in high school.
Just like my Jackson.
Yep.
Senior in high school.
We were talking about that. Yeah, it's a lot of parallels. So that was, my wife and I had a certain standard of life that we wanted to do. I was teaching high school geometry. My wife was teaching first grade, teaching kids to read and write. And one of us had to leave the classroom. And we said, well, figuring out who's going to leave the classroom. I said, well, you're teaching kids to read and write. That's way more important than me teaching math. So let me go figure out what I can do. And I was teaching, and there was a gentleman named Bill Campbell, who was, his wife Dee Dee, was a marketing executive with Home Bank. And I really enjoyed hearing about that company. And I said, man, that sounds like a great place to work. I knew nothing about mortgage, right? But it sounded like a really good place to work. It was a publicly traded, faith-based company about doing the right thing. And I said, man, that makes me feel good. If I'm going to leave the classroom, I want to feel good about what I'm doing. And so I went along the interview process with Home Bank, and it turned out to be a great place for me to go work. And it was funny, when I started in the business, that was when they had the idea of giving base salaries. Right? And they said, before I went over to training, they said, hey, we're going to give everybody a $30,000 base salary. I was the only person excited about that because that was more than I was making teaching. It was 36,000. I'm sorry, 36,000. I was like, yes, this is awesome. And I don't even have to go coach or anything. And I get this. And then you say I can earn more? Like, this is amazing. Well, then I got out of training. They took that away. So it was sink or swim time, right? But that's really how I got there. It was just about trying to find something to improve our quality of life, along with, I could still teach, could still educate, right?
Yeah.
Do good in the community, take time off, volunteer, do whatever. And it was kind of a natural fit.
At what point in your career did you know this is for me? Like you almost got bit by the
Probably,
bug.
yeah, I'd say right when I came out of training.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people do you have in your training class?
78 probably?
Yeah, 70, 100, something like that,
Yeah.
right? And how many people are still in the industry?
Today?
Yes.
Well, how about this? Within a year,
Right.
it was cut in half. Within 2 years, it was
Under
cut
10%.
by 2/3.
Yeah, it was.
Today, there's probably 10 of us.
Right.
If that, 8 to 10. And like 10 of us, it's because like my buddy Manny is actually working for the CFPB. So technically he's kind of in the industry,
Right.
but not
Still
as an
connected.
LO. He's
Right.
still connected. Yeah.
So I would say when I was in training, that's when I said, this is what I can do. I can be very good at this because it combines education, it combines sales. And a friend of mine, we were sitting in the airport once after one of our Chairman Club's events, and he was watching me on the phone. We got off the phone, and he said, I know what you do. And I said, what's that? He goes, everybody's your friend. He goes, you make friends. That's what you do. I enjoy talking to people. Not everybody does, right? I mean, but in our sales business, you need to enjoy talking to people. So I enjoy talking to people. I love math. I love figuring out problems, right? Understanding how you can get somebody into a property. You can, figure out the approval, right? It's a word problem, like for math. So one, get to educate. You get to, be social. You get to meet people. You get to, and that's also the amazing thing about our career too, is that everybody has a story. And I love hearing people's stories. We get to talk to more diverse paths in life than probably any other profession out there, because we have to interview everybody. Every time we do a loan, you have to interview, ask them questions, and you build up that rapport. But through building up that rapport, not just getting the facts, the financial facts, you're also learning their story. And I mean, I've done loans for people that are just awesome people that have these amazing stories that if I was doing another career, doing something else, pharmaceutical sales or something like that, I would never know those stories.
I love that you said that because I'm constantly trying to figure out what is the genetic DNA of a high-producing, highly successful mortgage loan originator. And I think I have like 80% of it built. But you just hammered home something that you and I shared. I didn't know we shared this. I, too, genuinely love getting to know people.
I love people's stories.
I'm so inquisitive about, well, what do you do for a living? Like, our job has to ask you how much you make and where you work.
Oh, yeah.
But I then, because I care about knowing, I'm like, but what does that mean? How did you get into that? Did you have to go to school for it? And, and all of a sudden, it's me taking down their information, but it's really me becoming their friend, because all I'm showing them is I care about them.
Right.
But really, maybe I'm not becoming the friend. Maybe I'm just really nosy and inquisitive.
Right.
But you wanting to get to know people, wanting to figure them out as people, is allowing them to trust you. And if they trust you, then they'll do their loan with you and not somebody else. Had you had sales experience prior to jumping into the mortgage business?
If I could teach a 13-year-old to understand and enjoy geometry, that's probably the hardest sales job out there.
Okay. No,
So
fair enough.
No matter what you do, you have sales, right? I convinced my wife to marry me.
Okay.
And Lord, thankful.
Yes.
We're on 19 years, right? Plus. So
Congrats on
I mean,
that.
everything in life is sales, right?
Yeah.
You're marketing yourself. You're putting yourself out there. You're trying out for a sports team. You are competing. You are trying to win, right? And that's sales, ultimately.
Did you play sports growing up?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were your sports?
Basketball, football,
Okay.
Soccer. When I got to high school, it was mainly soccer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you were also a competitor.
Right.
You're
It's
an
in that
athlete,
DNA.
you were coachable, you were competitive. How about this? If you were to give advice to someone who is looking to enter into the industry,
Right.
maybe this is advice that you wish was given to you or it was given to you. What advice are you giving people who maybe just like you, they're 26 years old, they've been teaching for 4 years, they realize that although they have a passion for teaching, they have a bigger passion for making gobs of money.
Potential. Yeah.
Potential, yes.
Yeah.
If they're successful, if they make it, what advice are you giving that person today?
I would say work hard. All right. One, work hard. Consistency is key. The first 5 years in our industry, I equate to trying to climb a wall straight up. It is hard. You don't have anything to hold on to. nobody's going to give you anything. You have to earn everything. Yeah, you might get some few referrals here and there, just happen, low-hanging fruit that falls in your lap. But for consistent business, it is hard. This industry is incredibly hard. And that's one thing that I'm not sure everybody understands coming into it, because they see successful loan officers. I did it when I came into the business, saw successful loan officers, saw what they were parking in the parking lot, saw how they were dressed, saw all this, and I was like, man, that's pretty cool. I'm smart. I'm as smart as that guy.
Yeah,
I can
right.
do it. Why can't I, right? It's hard. And so I tell people the first 5 years, be prepared to fail, right? You're going to fail. And if you die every time you fail, you're never going to make it, right? Take it, be a duck, let it run off your back, right? Understand it, have the experience, but don't hold on to it. Always be looking forward, right? So be prepared to fail, but also be prepared to use that as towards your success. I think is kind of the way I say it. But it's hard. That first 5 years, like straight up, after 5 years, the incline or the decline, whatever you want to call it, it shifts a little bit and you start being able to gain some traction, right? Then after 10 years, it gets a lot less hard climbing that wall and you're maintaining that business, you're maintaining that brand. And then after 15 years, it's really like you still have to work hard to get progress and make progress, but you're really kind of, from an incline standpoint, it's kind of plateaued, right? It's up to you to make the business because you've built the brand, you've got the longevity, you've got the staying power, right? But that first 5 years, be ready to work and hustle, open houses, whatever you got to do, Diet Coke and a Snickers. I mean, we could talk about all the techniques we did from day one, hitting every open house I could on a Saturday and Sunday, going out there to meet everybody I could, working, 80 hours a week. People talk about working a lot of hours. And I think that's one thing that, 70 hours a week, whatever it may be. And you hear a lot of people, I work a lot, I work this. And no, you take a lunch break, you do this, you do that. No, I'm talking about being disciplined. One of the great things that Home Bank taught me was get in the office. You had to be in the office by 7 for that sales call, right? Or not sales call, the sales meeting.
Yep.
And not only did you have to be there, you had to be ready. Because
you dressed.
You got to be dressed, you had to be ready, and you had to be ready to, hey, Dustin, tell us about your 60-second elevator speech or whatever. You had to be on point. You had to always be ready. So that type of training that we received is not around anymore. So you have to get other places. What you're doing on the Loan Officer Podcast is a great resource for originators or people looking to get into the business. But be disciplined. You got to work hard and be prepared to not make any money. Be prepared to be told more times no than yes. But don't let that affect you, because you can't die every time you're told no, right? Be a duck, let it run off your back. And a lot of times people say, I love saying be a duck, right? Because people think, oh, ducks, you see them on the surface, but they're working like hell underneath. No, I talk about being a duck because have you ever seen a wet duck?
No.
They're in water all day long.
Yes.
They're not wet, right? Because they just let it run off their back and they keep on going. So that's why I talk about being a duck. So have a positive outlook. That's something that I think a lot of folks lack today. I was having a conversation with a business owner who owns a great insurance company up in Northeast Florida, and we were talking about that the other day. And at the end of our conversation, he said, man, I love your enthusiasm and your positivity. It's hard right now. It's real hard, all right? I'm not sugarcoating. I'm not a Pollyanna. It's real hard. But at the same time, once there's a guy who I think of these people who affected your life along the way. There's a guy who named Bob Cabrera who ran mortgage, right?
I love Bob Cabrera.
Is amazing.
Is he still in the business?
He's retired.
Okay, congrats
Good
to Bob.
for him. Yeah. So Bob is amazing. One of my favorite people in life, right? And one of the expressions, and I still say it almost every day when I wake up, is allow me to attack today with unbridled enthusiasm. Unbridled enthusiasm. You got to be enthusiastic about what you're doing, and it rubs off, and you get opportunities because of that. So I haven't answered your question, man. I'm sorry.
No, you did. No, you absolutely did. And then you hit something home that is near and dear to my heart, which is working open houses. Like, we've done an entire episode.
Yeah.
Because you did it 17 years ago. I promise you, it's the same 17 years later.
Same basics, man.
And if it's a part of your sales DNA, then you need to lean into it, especially if you're trying to grow your business. Last question as it pertains to you as the loan originator and how you got to where you're at, because I do want to hit on these other points, and I do want to be cognizant of time, both yours, mine, and our audiences. You could have stopped at 10 million. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children 18 plus, if you are producing 10 million in volume in the mortgage industry, you are making more than 95% of single wage earners in the United States of America. It is a very good living. You had to have done some introspective, right? Because you have you've not just climbed a mountain, you've climbed the mountain, Mount Everest, and you're at the top. What makes you different? What was it? Why didn't you stop at 10 million or 20 million? You said, you know what? I can do 100 million, and not just do 100 million, but 3 years in a row. Your best year was 2020, right?
2021.
2021.
Yeah.
153.
53.
153 million?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
In 2021.
Right.
Okay. How many units-ish?
260 something.
Okay, so you got some big loan sizes there. You're kind of like California. You're
No.
kind of like
I wish I had
California with
I had
those loan
Texas-sized
sizes.
loans. I wish I had
right,
Texas-sized
because
loans.
like my friends right now in Columbus, Ohio, which by the way, I don't have friends in Columbus, Ohio, because that school's a joke. But if I had friends in Columbus, Ohio, for them to do 150 million, it would have been literally like 1,500 units. But nonetheless, don't get me wrong, the average mortgage loan originator does about 18 to 24 units. So you still 10x that.
Right.
But yeah, 150 million. What my question was, why didn't you stop like so many others do? What is it about Ian MacDonald that?
I think it comes back to that wanting to win, right? There is something about when you're competing on a deal, it feels good to win. It feels good. I mean, we're helping people. At the end of the day, that's something we can't lose sight of too, that we are helping people with a necessity in life, shelter, right? Now, some is more modest than others, and some is more extravagant than others. But at the end of the day, people need a place to live, and we're helping them accomplish that. And I think if you lose sight of that, that's the bad thing, right? You got to keep that in mind. Now, we're very fortunate to do what we do, and we are able to produce and earn what we can. But man, I love winning deals. I mean, that's the fact of the matter is that when you compete with somebody out there and you're going against another loan officer, you're going out, we're all competing, right?
Yeah.
And when you win, it feels good to win, right? And if you're good at something, it feels good to be good at something too. And very fortunate, I came out of the gate with Home Bank and had some great success that first year. And
It was probably that 4-hour ride along you did with me.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to take credit for all of your success right
Yes.
now today on this show.
I still get comments from Yank that I got to put them down for a quarter. So yeah. So I mean, you enjoy that success and you're like, wow, this is obtainable. And I think it also because I came from, I think a very, I don't want to say humble, but just a very basic life, right? My wife and I were both teachers, and it was like, wow, look what we can do. And the reason I say we, because it's a team sport.
Yes.
And I really saw my wife now stays at home, runs the house. She's the CEO, COO.
Yeah.
I'm just the CFO. And depending on the day, we know what that stands for, right?
Yeah.
So, but the day she decided to stay at home and take care of the family and run the household allowed me to concentrate on my career. It's not that I disengaged. We talked about that time. I didn't disengage from the family, but it alleviated she was a teacher, and being a teacher mom is one of the hardest things anybody can do, because you don't just have your children, you have 20, 30 children. And so it really allowed me to say, hey, let me concentrate more on my career. Very fortunate from day one. I remember I closed my first loan when I came out of training month one, right? And I remember that deal to this day. And it built upon that, but it was just really enjoying what I did. I enjoy people, enjoy building relationships, because that's ultimately the key to our business is relationships, right? And then enjoy winning. I mean, at the end of the day, it's also addicting. You win, it's addicting, right? You want to win more, right? And not only do you want to win more, but then you say, look, and you get back to your why, right? And my why is my family. And what can I provide to my family? And I want to provide them, everybody says it sounds kind of cheesy, I want to provide them with opportunities.
Yes.
I really want my family to be able to have any experience they want to have. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to give it to them, but I want them to have the ability to have that if we're fortunate enough to have it. Right?
Yes.
And so that comes back to the why. So you mix all that together, and it's just like, man, I'm good at what I do. I enjoy it. I like winning, and I like the fruits of my labor. Like, why not?
This industry gives people the opportunity to earn life-changing money. Right. When I say life-changing, not changing your life or your lifestyle as much as it could be changing your community's life, because you can now tithe better. You can give back to the less fortunate at a higher amount, both time and money.
Yes.
You can change your children's future trajectory, maybe not by giving them this massive wealth inheritance, but making their life in which you've enriched it through travel and experiences,
yes,
and stability,
right?
Because you weren't having to jump around and move from city to city and pull them from school to school. And that to me is very intriguing for guys like us. But I'm going to summarize your success.
I want to go back real quick to something
yes.
you just said, and it's very important too, the ability to give back of your time and energy, because I think that a lot of times we are in a very fortunate industry where we can make a great living, but recognizing that we also give us the ability to go donate our time to mentor, to whether it's financially or with our time. I think that's something that everybody who has success, you look at the most successful people in life, right? Very few of them or let's say the majority of them give back in an amazing way of their time, their talents, whatever it may be. So I think that's incredibly important too.
Yeah, and my take is the money's the easy part, but the money's also the lazy part.
Right.
Oh, it's easy for me to write a check, but you might not just need a check. You may need to hear my stories and my experiences.
Right.
And I encourage people that are in your seat and my seat and others alike, please make sure you're giving back both in time and money. Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. If all you can give is money, there's a lot of people who can give time who don't have money.
Right.
But preferably it's us doing both. But no, what I was going to summarize, and then we're going to move on to chapter 2 of today's episode. But I would summarize your particular success if I was trying to mold another Ian MacDonald in Spokane, Washington, or in Tucson, Arizona, or Plano, Texas, or Fort Myers, Florida.
Right.
I would say you're the type of person who, if it was told to you to do it, you did it, and you did it at your best of your ability.
Right.
Regardless of industry, probably dating back to when you were in middle school.
Right.
You're probably a really good student. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also going to say this about you, which is you're a competitor. You don't know what it's like to not be the best at whatever you can do because your mindset only goes there. If you stayed in education, I'd be shocked had you not won Teacher of the Year twice. Right? Twice for your school, once for your county, and probably were nominated for the state of Florida. Because that's who you are.
Right.
Right? But that's who we look for when you're a young, newly licensed loan officer and you're trying to get someone to take a chance on you. I want to know, regardless of industry, would you have been that person who was recognized as being the best because you didn't have it in you to not be that?
Right.
Right now, you may have strived to be the best and ended up being the top 3 out of 300, which, by the way, is one of the best.
Right.
So I would give you that. So it's like you do as you're told, meaning you're coachable.
Right.
You only know how to strive to be the best. And you're competitive as all get out. Like your competitive drive, you could have got happy. You could have been content closing $10 million and tripling what you were making as a teacher.
Right.
But then you would have looked up and seen how far down the ladder you were. I'm like, well, I can't even accept this. Even if I don't want to make that all that money is going to come with it, I can't accept not being recognized as just being damn good at what I do.
Well, I think the most competitive person you're most competitive with, at least for me, is myself.
Correct.
Like, I drive myself, and I think a lot of people talk about motivation and things like that. Motivation is, I'm horrible with expressions. Mm-hmm. Okay. But it's internal. If you try to get external motivation, it's only temporary, right? So you got to get your internal motivation. But I think that's a big piece of it, is just you compete with yourself. Well, and what standard do you hold yourself to? And I'm horrible. I mess up quotes like nobody's business. Okay. Like I can't get a quote right to save my life. But there's a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. who talked about being a street sweeper. If I'm going to be a street sweeper, I'm going to be to the heavens above, recognize I'm the world's best street sweeper, whatever it may be, right? And it's about doing a job. If I made pencils, dude, I am going to be the best pencil maker out there in this world, right? So whatever you do, be the best at it, because else why do it? And have fun. That's the other part. Have fun.
Have fun.
No,
I absolutely love that. And it rings true in every industry. It's advice you give a 13-year-old, you give it to a 43-year-old, everyone in between. All right, so we're going to pivot now.
All right.
So I do want to spend some time on the podcast. And this is going to be really for the people to geek out on.
Yeah.
Okay, because you launched your podcast with how many other people?
One other person, Matt Birdwell.
Okay, so you and Matt launched this podcast. You are a lender. Matt is a builder.
Yep.
Matt's also one of your clients.
Yes, and a good friend.
Probably
my longest standing relationship within the custom home industry.
Y'all have fun together.
We do.
You have great synergy.
Yes.
That matters. By the way, if I'm taking notes at home, I'm going to write that down. Oh, Find someone
You like.
that you have good synergy with.
Right.
So people are going to, if they do tune in, enjoy the banter back and forth. But you also found a business relationship that you now can go deeper on. So you can anchor down. Cool. And then you picked up a third along the way. Do you have a third?
Yeah, Jen O'Neill. So the way it started was 2 years ago. Matt and I, being friends as well, we were talking about, hey, we should do a podcast. And
Let's reframe this.
Okay.
2 years ago, after watching various episodes of the Loan Officer podcast,
Yes.
I was talking to my good friend and referral source, Matt. And I said, Matt, this guy D.O. down in Orlando is crushing it with his podcast.
It's like you're inside my mind.
I think we should do one.
Yes.
Okay.
So back to the reality.
Back to reality.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, so we were saying, like, let's do a podcast. And we were like, all right. And he's like, yeah, let's do one. What do you want to talk about? And we were like, we can tell dad jokes and be a dad podcast, or let's talk about custom home building and remodeling.
Okay.
Because that's something we both know. And we said, all right, that'd be fun. That's not out there in our marketplace. We could add some value back to the market as well as be the expert. And I was like, do you know how to do a podcast? He's like, no, do you? I'm like, nope. And so he went and met with what turned out to be a mutual friend. We didn't know it at the time. This guy named Nick, who's a financial advisor, but Nick is passionate. If he's going to do something, he's going to do it to the nth degree. Okay. So he gave Matt a picture of what the equipment we needed. So Matt and I met, and I said, all right, I'll buy this half, you buy that half. And this was around.
And how much money did you spend roughly?
Probably $300 a piece.
Yeah, you're talking about headsets,
four microphones, 4 headset, a Focusrite, a red box, I call it.
Yeah,
and then,
which, by the way, our Focusrite, if you're watching on YouTube right now, is like literally right here next to Ian. So Ian came in today. He goes, "Oh my God, I'm so excited! You use the same exact."
I feel legit. I have the same.
I don't even know what that thing is called. Is it a mixing board?
It's a red box.
It's a red box.
That's what we call it, the red box.
We call it the red box.
Yes.
JC's off camera right now. JC, what do we call that thing?
It's a Scarlet.
It's a Scarlet.
Scarlet.
Is that the technical name? It's a Scarlet. It's something that you can plug your mic and headphones into. And okay, cool.
See, and make sure you're not clipping.
And make sure you're not clipping, whatever that means.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know. I've heard that term once. I use it all the time, and I sound like I'm a professional.
All right.
So Matt and I ordered this equipment. It started showing up through Amazon on our doorstep. And my wife, Erin, his wife, Darla, were like, what are you guys doing?
What are you guys up to now?
We're like, oh, we're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
And they're like, you guys are idiots. What are you doing?
Erin's like, oh, you mean like Dustin down in Orlando?
Yes,
No, she didn't say that.
Yeah.
All right.
But she's like, you don't know how to do that. I'm like, we're going to learn.
Yeah.
We're going to learn. So Matt and I got the equipment, put it literally in a box, put it in my office, and we said, we're going to meet once a week for 2 hours until we learn how to do a podcast. Every Wednesday we met, and we were literally trying to plug cords in and didn't even know how they didn't fit. Oh, we got to order a new cord. And we finally got to the point where we could hear ourselves on our headset. And it was the most amazing thing ever. We were like, we can hear ourselves. This is so cool. Well, right about that time, Jen, who we knew through the Builder Association, which is we do the podcast in parallel with the Builder Association because it's a way to highlight members of the Builder Association and bring recognition to the Builder Association.
Yeah, so why I love Ian's podcast and why JC and I are going to travel the country basically ripping, stripping, and then sharing from you is because you do it the way that a realtor could do it in Topeka, Kansas, the way that a financial advisor could do it in Middletown, Rhode Island.
Right.
Although financial advisors have a ton of red tape that usually makes it very cumbersome to try to do a podcast.
Right.
I've learned that by having financial advisors on as guests.
Okay.
But a commercial realtor could do it. A mortgage lender could do it. Like an attorney could do it. And you don't have to have this like national platform where you're trying to be like the next Dave Ramsey or the next Clark Howard.
I don't even do it as I do it as a host. I don't even do it as a mortgage originator.
Okay, but you are leveraging the podcast to connect with people that you either already work with and you're trying to solidify a relationship, or you're trying to go deeper with that relationship, or you are using your podcast to attract people to get to know who you are as a person, but also what you do as a profession.
Indirectly, yeah. Indirectly. It's kind of secondary. It's not the main focus we did. It was we wanted to do something in a hobby, right, for fun, and we wanted to give back in terms of interview people, and we love listening to the interview style podcast, right? How I built this or whatever it may be. We love listening to those, and we said, hey, let's do something along those lines. And so we decided, let's do this. And we're also all serve on the board of the Custom Builder and Remodeler Council at the Builder Association. So we said, hey, what better platform than to have guests? Finding guests is hard sometimes, and figuring out who you're going to have on. You've obviously ran out of guests, so I showed up today. But it helps finding people, right? And figure out who you're going to have. So we said, let's find some people within our industry. And so we did that. But Jen came on and she said, hey, can I help with the podcast? And we're like, well, do you know anything about podcasts? She's like, nope. We're like, fit right in. And so she came in.
You'll work.
Yeah. And so then she saw me and Matt being Neanderthals trying to plug, cords in and stuff. And she was like, hey, that guy Nick that showed you what to get, why don't you ask him how to use it? And we're like, man, you're so smart. Like, that's such an easy idea. And you know what they say, if you want something done, get a woman involved, right?
Okay.
And so Jen got involved, got us started. So she was the linchpin to us getting rolling. And Nick came in within 2 weeks. Like, we spent 2 hours, and he showed us how to get started, created our template on our laptop. And so, boom, we're off and rolling. At first we tried to understand how to produce a podcast and how to level and how to get the ums and ahs and all that stuff out of there. But we quickly realized we're not good at that. And that's a lot of time, energy, and effort.
He's a home builder and you're a lender, and that's what you need
to
be focused on.
We're doing this in 2021.
Okay.
In 2020, we were busy.
Pretty busy, yeah.
We were pretty busy. And so we didn't want to invest that time. So we started looking around, and I found an online service that was called Next Day Podcast.
Okay. So hey, there's
a plug.
Slow down.
Yep.
Next Day Podcast. And how much?
They do a launch package.
Okay.
All right. And I forget the price of it. Reasonable.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know.
Under $1,000?
Oh yeah. I mean, $500, $600,
there we
something
go.
like that.
Yep.
Maybe I forget what it is, right? But it's probably gone up. But anywho, Next Day Podcast, and the part that was attractive to that was their launch package, which I think was 6 episodes. They would help you, one, find music.
Okay.
Okay.
Like intro and outro music.
Intro and outro
Yep.
music, and they would help you record an intro and an outro.
Okay.
So all we had to do is fill the sandwich with the meat and have the middle of the podcast. And so they keep on file your intro and your outro, and we record an episode. We download it. We record it through the laptop. I download it as an MP3, and then at night I just go in, send it into them. They help you get set up with Buzzsprout or whomever to host it, and you send it into them. And literally the next day, the way they do it is they have people all over the world, right? Different time zones. Some people are in the future, some people are in the past, or whatever. And the next day, you will have a professionally produced podcast, leveled, ums and ahs out, mixed with your intro and outro.
And what does that cost you per episode?
There's different levels.
Okay.
Well, one thing is funny that, if you ever listen to the Punch List podcast, it will never go over 30 minutes. Because you go over 30 minutes, you got to pay more. Okay?
Okay.
So there's little things there, because when we say we don't have a budget, we literally don't have a budget. So we want to be under 30 minutes. So every episode Matt records with his phone is sitting there, and we don't do video, and we get to 5 minutes. Matt's going 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Like, we're counting down. We don't want to go over 30 minutes because you can be charged more. So anywhere from $90 to $120, depending on the level of service you want
Per episode.
Per episode.
And a 24-hour turnaround.
24-hour turnaround.
So literally, a loan officer, a realtor, a financial advisor, an attorney, you name that sales professional, solopreneur, I like to call them, 100% commission typically.
Yep.
Or it could be a chef who owns his or her own restaurant or bakery.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, you can launch your own podcast for basically $1,000.
Less than $1,000.
You bought $300 in equipment.
6 episodes plus.
Yeah.
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 And
And then you could do one a month, and it's going to cost you somewhere around $150 a month.
Yeah.
So
$120 a month. Yeah.
You have to be able to ask yourself, am I going to get, well, up front, $3,000 of value the first year, and then going forward, $1,800 of value going forward, and you have a Focusrite
Red box.
Scarlett,
we learned.
John calls it a Scarlett. You have 4 headphones. You have 4 mics.
Right.
You used what service for your intro and your outro?
Next Day Podcast.
Next Day Podcast. You upload your produced podcast to what
Buzzsprout.
Buzzsprout.
Right.
JC uses Podbean.
Right.
And then your podcasts end up on Spotify and Apple?
Spotify, Apple,
Google Play,
Google,
Stitcher.
Amazon.
Amazon,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anywhere
So-
you listen to your favorite podcast.
Anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, now within your community, whether it's going to youth group whether it's going to men's softball or whether it's going to the Home Builders Association or everywhere in between, you are now not just Ian MacDonald, the badass mortgage loan originator. You're also a podcast host, and you have a podcast name, and you have hats made, and you can use your.
That's when we got legit. When we got hats
Hey,
made.
you know you're legit.
Like, you get a hat made, you're legit.
Are you like JC is so anal with our hats that he spends a lot of money and he has to get them from Lids because if they're not from Lids, then they're not quality hats.
Well,
which is why they're very difficult to give out for free. T-shirts, yo, if you want a T-shirt, hit JC up. Hats, you better be someone special.
Well, I could tell you, we got our hats made. If you think about the industry we're in, right, and also dealing with residential construction, the only thing that was probably harder than getting a hat made in 2021 was building a house.
Okay.
Like, it was tough. And we finally, like, the marketing person we know, she was like, I've got this stash of these gray hats. What do you think?
They're perfect.
And I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah, they're perfect.
So they're great.
But you can now use your podcast as a way to pay homage or give thanks to someone valuable in your life because, look, people love to come on podcasts. They are fun to do.
Right.
They're really fun. And then what you're able to do is take that content and potentially chop it up and use it on your social platforms. Right. So it's less about how many people actually downloaded this to listen to it.
Right.
It's more about, I was able to invite someone on.
Well, and that's a key point. You talk about in our industry in mortgage, I always talk about it. When you have an event, right, we've talked about hosting events. The invitation is worth way more than the event.
Yes.
Because you get to reuse that invitation multiple times. And the fact that somebody's honored that you invited them, right? And so the podcast itself, the ability to talk about the podcast, the ability to, I ask people, my kids roll their eyes. I'm like, so Dustin, do you like to listen to a podcast? And the kids are like, oh my gosh, he's not going to do it. Yeah. And I'm like, well, have you ever listened to the Punch List podcast? And then you can talk about it. So it gives you something to talk about, right? But what's cool about it too, that I have actually started doing a second podcast for fun.
Okay.
All right? I don't know if I told you about this one. So one of the organizations that I volunteer with is called Investing in Kids, Inc. It's an education foundation for St. John's County School District. And through there, I mentor and volunteer at Take Stock in Children. And there's a gentleman named Jim Wheeler who runs the programs. And probably about over the summer, we were just talking, and I was like, Jim, have you ever thought about doing a podcast for Inc.? And he said, no, why? And I said, to spread the message of what you guys do within the educational community. And he's like, all right, so now here's something I have learned that I think I'm a little decent at, that I know how to do it. I can connect the wires, right? Yeah. And I'm like, Jim, I've got the equipment. Once a month now, we put out the Inc. podcast where we talk about a different program that investing in kids.
That's a whole nother scope of idea. Like I was just trying to tell, realtors, loan officers, financial advisors, attorneys, et cetera, how for $1,000 and this type of equipment and you go to this service and upload through Buzzsprout or Podbean.
I don't even upload. They upload it.
Yeah.
I just send it and I say, please upload it.
And
they upload
and what I loved about it is it gives me a reason to call people who are either my dream client, my dream referral source, or just someone I'm trying to connect with.
Right. And
instead of being boring and stale and saying, let's grab coffee, I'd love to pick your brain, you're like, hey, I had this podcast. I'm looking for a guest. I think you'd be awesome.
Right.
And then from there, you let nature take over, you build the relationship, and hopefully that relationship comes back to you at some form where you can bring value to their business, they can bring value to your business, and you expand your network because he or she with the biggest network tends to also have the biggest net worth.
When I think of it also from a branding standpoint, ultimately at the end of the day, I do quite a bit of construction perm financing, custom home building, remodeling, financing. And that's a very small niche space. And it's a wonderful space to play in. I love it. I love the business. It's a relationship business. It's not widgets. It's not whatever. It's a relationship business.
Yeah, because roughly 1/3 of your business is you helping people finance.
2/3.
2/3 of your business is help. So you are a CP loan expert.
Right.
We could have done an entire episode on CP loans.
Right.
We didn't do it because I did one like 2 years ago with Eric Putt.
Okay.
Which, by the way, if you want a good episode, it is one of our earlier episodes, so it probably won't be as clean as this one. We were still finding our voice, but Eric Putt's a buddy of mine, and like you, he crushes it in the CP world. Right. So we had him on and just dedicated an entire episode to it. You and I could have done that because you crushed the CP market. I'm sorry, I cut you off. You're talking about branding.
No, I was just talking about branding and when you it's hard. You know the expression. If you're a jack of all trades, you're a specialist in none, or something like that. And I think within the origination field, we need to have some areas that we specialize in, right? Because people want to know you. If they just know you as a loan originator, that's tough. right? But if they know you as a construction perm specialist or a doctor mortgage specialist or a community lending specialist or whatever it may be, that's part of your brand, right? And the CP world is a very hard world to break into. But once you get into that world, it's a great relationship business. And so part of what I do is what I want is to be known as an expert. I want to be known. I want to build my brand as being an expert. So by being just a host, and I don't talk about mortgage on the podcast, just being the host of a custom home and remodeling podcast helps elevate my status as being an expert. Yeah. Right. And it gets me on that level. So it helps build that brand, which again, getting back to, overall life, right? You want to be known as what you do and as part of your brand. I think it helps out.
No, I love it. Yeah. That's, so many other aspects that my brain's already going, like you mentioned the charity, right? So you're like, well, I figured out for here. Now I can go deeper in other relationships because maybe I can introduce them to it, teach them how easy it is. Yeah. And you're developing another skill set. You're leveraging that skill set to build relationships and bring value. And if you focus on building relationships and bringing value to others, I promise you,
it comes back.
It comes back.
And you're building within that community. On that podcast, we're going to interview educators. We interview people who support the Education Foundation, and it helps build that network of folks and those relationships and authentic relationships. I think that's incredibly important too, because if you lead with authentic relationships, that's going to get you way farther than being insincere, right?
And lastly, you are creating a library of content that if you do a good job of cataloging it, the next conversation you have with that new prospective client, if something came up, like, oh my gosh, we actually covered this on an episode of my podcast 9 months ago, you then just click, drag, and send them the link. All of a sudden, you just solidified yourself as the SME, as the subject matter expert.
Right.
This is fantastic, Ian. So we are running long.
Yes.
But I did want to get to chapter 3.
All right.
Okay, so we have like 3 minutes to do chapter 3.
Okay.
But this is near and dear to you because you are in your 40s.
Yep.
And you are a family man. And if things go well, you'll be an empty nester and you crush it in production. But there has to be a time where it's like, look, you closed all that volume with, I think you told me 1.5 assistant.
In 2020, yeah.
In 2020. How many in 2022?
2.
Yeah. Right, so there was 3 of you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, 2022. We brought a third one on.
No, not 2022, 2021. That was your breakout. That was your biggest year.
2021, we brought a third one on during that year.
Okay, cool. So that's good for people to know.
Yeah.
But in 2020, you still did over $100 million with just 1.5 assistants.
Right.
And or junior LOs or team LOs.
In the beginning of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. But you know a thing or two about team building.
Right.
You know a thing or two about figuring out work-life balance.
Right.
For those that are at that point in their career, based on your experience, knowing that we only have 3 minutes, what advice could you give someone as it pertains to both work-life balance, what you've struggled with, what you've also overcome, and also team building, what you struggled with and what you've overcome?
Yep. So life-work balance is one of the easier ones for me, right? And I love saying life-work because life's more important than work, okay? So understand that. Don't take away, opportunity cost. You have to take away from something to give somewhere else. But don't take away from life. Enjoy it. We all have examples in our lives that people left our lives too early, right? And it's a great reminder, and we get into it for that little bit. Oh, I'm going to live life to the fullest. I'm going to do it. But then it fades. Don't let it fade. Enjoy life, right? And give that same energy to your family, the ones you love, right? So that's important. From building a team standpoint, it's really hard. The divorce rate of teams is higher than that of marriages, okay? And so that's what I've heard. So you have to find somebody you trust. For me, I got to a point where either I was going to have a heart attack or I needed to get somebody I could trust on my team. And really what I was looking for at that time, I had built my brand by this point. I'd built my brand that I'm Ian MacDonald. I'm a loan officer. I built my brand.
You have your following. You have your past client database. You're crushing it.
Yeah. Tim is a loan officer on my team. Incredible dude.
Shout out to Tim Delp.
Fellow
home banker.
Yeah, there's a common thread here, right?
Yeah, there's a common thread.
But shout out to Tim Delp. So when Tim and I started talking, I first approached him. I think what I said to him was, I don't need a lead singer. I don't need a lead guitar. I need the world's best drummer. I need a Ringo Starr. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want somebody who, and that's hard in sales because typically in sales, people are alpha, characters, right? They want to be that lead dog and they want to do that. That's that nature of wanting to win. But I found somebody in Tim who has been a great complement to my business. And also he was looking for the life-work balance as well. So we were able to help each other. And it's been great since. So find somebody you trust, right? And find somebody and have a defined expectation and set those expectations up front. Because the last thing you want to do is get into something and say, oh, wait a second, this isn't what either of us wanted, right? And so it took time for Tim and I to work through and talk through that. But when we did, we said, all right, that's great. And at the time I brought him on, I already had two wonderful loan coordinators, Janet and Jennifer, and then we brought Kimberly on about the same time, just because the production volume warranted it.
So Janet, Jennifer, and
Kimberly
yep. Clean up the mess that you and Tim make.
No, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, what I always say, Henry Ford would be proud. Right?
Yes.
Because nobody duplicates each other. Everybody has a position. Everybody has a role. Nobody duplicates each other. And I think that's important because I think of a loan process as an assembly line.
Has to be.
Everybody's
business,
working
every
on it.
successful business needs to be assembly line. It's the best thing Ford gave us.
Yeah. And so we're
besides
working
the
on
F-150.
Well, there you go, too. Yeah. And the, what'd you say, the Explorer ST, too?
Yes, the Explorer ST. Yeah.
So, everybody's doing their job. Everybody's doing a role. And everybody does it as to the best of their ability. And my job is to sell. That's my job, is to sell and form relationships, genuine relationships. And that's what I go do. And that's what Janet, Jennifer, and Kimberly allow me the time to do. So I still take every loan application. When I interview a customer, I take every loan application. I'm old school. I write it all down, and then I put it into the computer. I do send some people online if they choose to do an online application, but not many people do. I like that interaction because that's when you build that rapport. So I take it, submit the file, structure it, do the income, because I want to make that's on me. Mm-hmm. That is my file. That is my name on it. I need to make sure that it's structured properly. So I do that. Tim does the same thing, and we submit it in. Jennifer takes it, submits it in. Janet handles our new construction information with our builder, customer items, things like that from a new construction standpoint. We do some production build, but we do majority custom home financing. And then Kimberly is really a communications expert. She helps make sure our communication runs strong. And so
sorry to cut you off, how much time did you spend building out these systems and processes?
17 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Literally.
Still tweaking on them, man.
Yes. And then
that's one thing this year has done with it's been slower, right? Is that
slower? You only funded 103 million, not 150 million.
107.
107. Who's counting?
Yeah. But no, it's been a slower year. So you fine tune those things.
Yeah.
You go through and you say, how do we get better every single day? How do we get better? And you fine tune this process, whether it's, your stock emails that you send on a pre-approval, right? And you have this and you figure out the verbiage in there. Oh, you know what? Hey, I should have used this language, or I should have done this, condensed this, or I should do this, right? And you learn those things and you fine tune the system and you continue to do it. And so when you say, how long have I been doing that? Day one.
Yeah. So regardless of your team being you and one assistant, you, a team loan officer, which is what I would call Tim in my world.
Yep.
And then you all have 3 assistants that various roles that they play.
Right. And we have a processor. Her job is to process.
But those systems you started building 17 years ago.
Right.
And then when you became overwhelmed, you were ready to have a heart attack, you slid one person in and said, you take this piece off my plate. You slid another person in.
And I always knew that I wanted to take that one piece and make it better.
Yeah.
Like I was doing it,
yes.
but I want to make it better.
If you offload it, and we teach this a whole nother episode, and we do this in coaching, it needs to be better than what you would have done. I mean, that is, I can hold Kevin Murphy more accountable than I can hold myself.
Right.
So he is technically, when it comes to blocking and tackling, a way better loan officer than I ever was, because that person in the mirror, when I talk to him, man, he pushes back on me.
Right.
When I go to talk to Kevin, we have that respect and that rapport that if I ask for something, he's going to deliver.
Right.
So, no, I love that. And then my last question was, how much time do you spend weekly? Like, do you do team meetings? Do you do huddles? Like, how do y'all make sure that you're always staying cohesive?
Every Monday morning at 8:30 in the morning, we have our pipeline call.
Okay.
Which is me, Tim, Janet, Jennifer, Kimberly, and Madeline.
Okay.
And he's our processor.
He's your processor, yep.
And we get on the phone at 8:30 in the morning, and we walk through, not every loan on the pipeline. We walk through the win ones, right? What's important now, the next month, whatever it may be. You have that timeline that you look at. And if there's anything else we need to talk about, new files coming in, but we go through every single one of them. I know exactly where every file is. I know what's going on with it. I might not be knee deep in it, but I know what's going on. So my referral partner calls me and they say, hey, Ian, what's going on with the Smith file or whatever? I say, hey, this is where we're at right now. Okay. And we can talk about that. So we do that every Monday, we have a working through Teams, through the Teams app. We have a working spreadsheet that has the files for that month. We break them out to purchase, construction, and refinance. And it has, not want to say milestones, but you have your ICD, you got all that initial approval, appraisal, you got all that stuff, right? So we get to that, and that's constantly being updated. And every team member has access. Everybody updates it. So that way we know what's going on with that. So there's constant updates going on, but we have only once a week meeting. And I do that pipeline.
You run that.
I run that.
Yeah.
Sunday nights, I get on my computer. Sunday nights, everybody's to bed. I get on my computer. First thing I do every night is I make my to-do list for the next day. So I have that already printed on the printer when I show up to the office. Second thing.
There's something else to write down. If you made it this far in this episode, which I know we're long.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's good. It's really good. I mean, I'm fine with that. I'm blowing through a couple other meetings, and people are going to be pissed at me, but I'm going to blame you.
There you
go. So they'll hate you and not me.
Sweet.
But no, I loved that. This is what successful people do. To-do list.
Right.
My to-do list is done every day at 5:30.
Yep.
At 10, I look at my calendar because I'm packing my gym bag, and I need to know what clothes to pack.
Right.
Because I dress for the occasion.
Yeah. I lay my clothes out the night before, too. It's funny.
Yep. But so you do your to-do list at 10 o'clock at night once everyone's in bed, and every Sunday you spend time methodically preparing for your pipeline meeting.
I go through every loan on that pipeline, and I go into the system, and I read the notes, and I make sure if it's failing validation for the ICD. Every Sunday night, I'm the one filling out that pipeline form. Now, during the week, the team does, but every week I go through every loan.
By the way, I'm so sorry. ICD, initial CD?
Initial closing disclosure.
Initial closing disclosure. Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
Geeking out on me.
Yeah. So I go through everything, and I read, make sure, all right, hey, the appraisal is ordered. Why is it? When was its due date? If it's not in yet, why? Do we have insurance? And I'm not micromanaging. I just do it for my own knowledge because I'm the one ultimately, again, responsible. It's my name on that referral, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the one handling it for the builder, for the real estate agent. So I want to know what's going on. So I spend probably a couple hours every Sunday night just hammering away, getting that ready. And then the next day we go over it. I expect the same from Tim. Tim does the same exact thing. And when we have our meeting, we have everything laid out for us, and we just walk through it. And then it's the players on the team, each pulling doing their job.
That's awesome. Last question for you. What's next? How much longer are you going to run at this rate in mortgage before it's time to spend more time, whether it's in Spain or you told me earlier that your family did a road trip up in Scotland.
Yeah.
What's
pretty awesome.
Yeah. What does the future look like for Ian MacDonald?
I got my goal, my plan. I think we always have to plan, and that's one thing. I think I might have heard you talk about this exit strategy too.
Yes.
Not just
what's your exit strategy, big dog?
I'm still trying to figure that part out, but I have 10 years. What I say is I'm 45. I've got 10 years of hyper focus that I want to go hard for 10 years till I'm 55. At that point, hopefully, both my kids will be off the official payroll,
yes.
right? Hopefully independent, doing their own thing, right? And Aaron and I can enjoy life. We had kids young and kind of intentional, and that's one word I've heard you use multiple times, be intentional in your life, right? And be intentional in what you do. But hopefully when I'm 55, I can have the choice. I think that's a big thing. I might choose to stay doing mortgages, right? I mean, that's cool. Why not? It's a great industry. Or I choose to go back teaching high school geometry, but I'll have my choice.
That's fantastic. Are you on LinkedIn?
Yes.
All right. He is Ian. It's MacDonald. M-A-C.
M-A-C, yes.
M-A-C Donald. So Ian MacDonald. Ian, thank you so much for being a guest on the Loan Officer Podcast. If you want to connect with Ian, look him up on LinkedIn. He is there. Don't know how free and how much extra time he has, but I would guess it's probably the best place for people to connect with you if they're looking to connect. You have tuned in to the Loan Officer Podcast. We thank you if you made it this far. If you like what we're doing, what we're spitting, and what we're putting out, all we ask is that you share it, that you give us a 5-star review, that you subscribe on YouTube, and tell one or two other people that you think would benefit from content like this to tune in as well. He is Ian. I'm Dio. That's all the time we have for you today, but we'll catch you next episode. Peace.